Hey there, welcome to the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. So Joe Biden was supposed to be at an event yesterday. He was late, and they kept putting it off. No, he'll be there, he'll be there, he'll be there. And finally, after 90 minutes, they canceled, and they said, well, he tested positive for COVID. He's got to go back to Delaware now, and he's going to self-isolate, and we're not going to be seeing him in public for a few days, and he's still going to be wearing his mask or doing his presidential duties or whatever. It just seems so convenient. What a heck of a coincidence we have going on here. He look, here's my guess. He was having a bad day. Instead of dragging him out there and making it worse, we just came up with this COVID thing. Then we have an excuse that we can take him off to Delaware for like the next week until we figure out what the heck we're going to do about replacing him. Then all they're going to do is they're going to isolate him out in Delaware, and people are just going to send him notes, text messages, emails, phone calls, visits, begging him to quit, and it's not for the good of the country. They just realize the electoral map is killing them. They have no shot if the human Roomba stays in. That's my suspicion. Of course, I'm super cynical, maybe a little bit jaded from doing talk radio so long. So your thoughts, 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. Let's try David in Bedford. You're first up on WBAP. What do you think, sir?
Yes, sir, James. I'll tell you something. I've been thinking about this, and you know, we're not a democracy. We are a representative republic, okay, with separation of powers. As long as we maintain the Constitution and the way we have our nation, they will never be able to take over full control. But when they say, and President Biden says that Donald Trump that threatens democracy, they're talking about their democracy. He threatens their mob control. That's what's going on. Hillary Clinton said back in 2016 that Donald Trump it was a threat to the New World Order. That's because they're pushing this nation in that direction, and that's what they want. But they can't get full control because we're not a democracy. We're a representative republic, and we can change things, and they know that.
Well, I had the guy. This was from the James Show on April 10th. Some guy pointed out something to me that I just can't forget. The way they use the term democracy in this setting is the same way they use the term democracy in foreign policy settings when they want a regime change, when they want to overthrow a guy. So-and-so's a threat to democracy, or we were standing up for democracy in Ukraine when we got Zelensky elected, or we were standing up for democracy when we kicked Saddam Hussein out. And I don't know, you want to hear this? I know you didn't hear that show here. Let's listen to this. This will make sense.
They simply changed the predicate from being a Russiagate predicate to a democracy predicate. And this is very nasty because democracy is the watchword of the foreign policy establishment to overthrow governments. I'm just going to say that again. Democracy is the watchword of the foreign policy establishment to overthrow governments. So we have had a lot of presidents, Republican presidents, who have been tarred by left-wing media as being, bad people, dictators, people were calling George Bush a Nazi and things like that. I remember in my lifetime. They were not calling him a threat to democracy. That triggers when something is categorized as a threat to democracy by our government. What that does, it's like an immune system response that activates for the white blood cells of our blob to descend the NGO swarm. The university centers, which act as proxies by the government, are all funded by our federal government. For DOD counterintelligence, for the State Department to get involved, for the FBI, for DHS, they all descend on it. And they use their media organs as well.
Well, yeah, and he goes on there, but you're making a good point, because if they really do believe that, wouldn't they be encouraging lax security in his detail? I mean, wouldn't they be not so hot and heavy about clearing all the roofs? And I don't want to go conspiracy theorists, but their behavior is so poor as of late. They invite stories like that.
What's horrible is that the left have become so Trump deranged that you've got what people would normally not do. They're like, they may be tongue in cheek, but they kind of sort of halfway meant it. They should get better aim. That's bull. That should never be somebody's thought.
Right? That is disgusting. I think we all agree with that one. Good call, David. I appreciate you calling in. Let's go to Danny in Waco. You're next up on WBAP. What do you think, sir?
So going back to the peace officer in Dallas that made that comment.
Yeah.
People have been making comments like that all over the internet, all over Twitter, TikTok, everywhere. Now, the latest one I heard is Sam Gass. He's a singer with Tenacious D with Jack Black.
That's Kyle Gass.
The comment he made.
Kyle Gass.
Yeah. My apologies. But you heard the comment he made.
Mm-hmm.
Now, since then, the tour was canceled. The company that sponsors him dropped him. Now, the police officer took an oath to serve and protect, not to serve and protect certain people, but to serve and protect. And for him to promote violence, I think he needs to be fired, and I would even go as far as pulling his Texas peace officer's license.
Ooh, that's interesting. Do you have any sort of reservation about the idea that if you're the one that is getting someone else fired, you're the oppressor, and if you're the one getting fired, you're not the oppressor, you're the victim? What about that?
I think he got himself fired.
What about the idea that I thought you were against cancel culture?
I don't know about that. All I know is him being a peace officer, he has violated his oath to serve and protect by promoting violence.
Okay, but think about it like this, because this is sort of the Jesus/Gandhi approach to it, really MLK too. How about we let him keep his job so the other police officers or people in society that think like him, they can look at this situation and clearly know that we're not the bad guys. We're not the Nazis. We're not the fascists. We're not the cancel culture. We're not the woke. We're not the offended. We're not the snowflakes. We can put up with it. What about tolerating him based on that because of the effect it could have on third-party observers?
I think to an extent it would be okay, but for the fact of what he said and the severity of the comment and his position, I don't see any reason to keep him.
Fair enough.
Around. I just don't think it's right. Yeah.
I can see that. I still think, then thank you for your call. I still think I would come down on the side of keeping him, just to let him know that here's the lesson, dude. We're not the bad guys. We're not the Nazis that you've been told on TV. And one way we're going to prove that is to not get you fired and ruin your life and have you go home and look at your kids and not know how you're going to feed them next month. And when you do that and you are in that scary, horrible position of now being unemployed and maybe you're going to be evicted from your apartment or miss some mortgage payments and foreclosed on or whatever. And who did that to you? That would just calcify you in your anti-Team Red position. That would just make you even more deeply Team Blue. And I think that's one of the lessons that is meant by turn the other cheek. It's not necessarily get revenge or even defend yourself. This guy, that's a victimless crime that he did. I mean, it hurts my feelings, but didn't actually hurt me. Didn't hurt you. Didn't hurt anybody. It's just a reprehensible position to take. But why don't we sit down and have a talk with him? Explain to him why he's wrong. Explain to him that when we go through the checklist of values that he supports, he's probably closer to our team anyway. 800-288-9227. We'll continue with this on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. All you people on hold, hang on, I'll get to you. I just want to talk to my next guest because we need some legal expertise. Byron Henry is back on The James Show. Not to just slap this on you without any sort of preparation. I know we weren't going to talk about this, but legally speaking, do you have any guidance or info on the what we were talking about in the previous segment, the Dallas cop that's in trouble for making the statement, oh, the sniper should have had better aim? Should he keep his job? Should he lose his job? But what are the legal ramifications? Can he be fired for something like that? If he is, can he be rehired immediately by another police force? Like, legally speaking, what is he looking at?
Well, it's good to be with you today. On that issue, the first thing you have to think about is, as public employers, employees of these type of, like fire departments, police departments, teachers for that instance, they don't lose their First Amendment rights. Most of them have unions and contracts that deal with consequences. So you have to know exactly what the collective bargaining agreement says, but most of them have catch-alls for some sort of punishment, whether it's a suspension or without pay or whatnot, for conduct unbecoming of the official, whether it's police, fire, or whatnot. So whether or not they lose their job or should lose their job, I'll leave that to a lot of your listeners that actually pay the taxes and pay the salaries for public employees. But I can tell you that the collective bargaining agreement will have provisions in it with respect to ways that superiors can discipline other officers, probably not firing them, termination for something they said either off color or just a bad idea, a bad judgment in what they said, especially if it's off duty. But I would certainly say that there can be repercussions for that, and they're probably legal.
Interesting. I mean, I still see the gray area there. And while what he said is absolutely reprehensible, I just don't like setting the precedent that you can be kicked out of your job for saying something that, the powers that be find reprehensible. That's a tough slope for me to try and stand on. No pun intended, given the recent shooting.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I think the best thing is grace in these situations. And I mean, some people double, triple down. Sometimes it's not their first offense. Sometimes it's just who they are. And those are different situations than one-offs where people have families and livelihoods and say something either hateful, just flat out, we're all human beings, and they say something hateful, or they just have bad judgment and say something, stupid. So it's a long stretch, and with the First Amendment the way it is, and how important that is to a society like we have here in the United States, I tend to lean on the let's don't fire people and cost people their livelihood over saying dumb things. And I just put a caveat to that is unless they demonstrate that that's just who they are and who they're always going to be, and they do it over and over, or they have no remorse, or they're not sorry for it.
Right. Like if there was actually a victim, if someone was literally hurt, or some property was destroyed, or some money was lost, then maybe. But just words, I think it's got to be worse than that before you lose your job. The other thing I want to talk to a legal expert about, Byron, is these plans that the White House is floating in the coming weeks to establish term limits for justices on the Supreme Court and an enforceable ethics code. This sounds like very clearly unconstitutional, and not just unconstitutional by the letter of the law, but definitely by the intent of the whole balance of powers and the checks and balances in the three branches of government system. This looks like an end around to getting control of the Supreme Court, which is not supposed to happen.
Yeah, it's pipe dreams. It reeks of desperation to shore up a base, which you'd think he'd have his base shored up on the left 4 months before the election, but that's not the case. So these aren't plans. They're schemes more like, and it's all unconstitutional unless you take into consideration that he's planning constitutional amendments. So just so the listeners, and part of his plan is to propose constitutional amendments, and obviously those would not be unconstitutional. You can amend the Constitution. But the plans he is putting forward with respect to term limits would require constitutional amendment for sure. And the ethics code, there is an ethics code that covers the Supreme Court. It's the Code of Judicial Ethics. The issue is there's no one that can hold them accountable on it other than themselves. So what they want to do is have Congress write rules on when justices can and can't hear cases, and have other people tell them they have to get off cases, which is basically just manipulating the results of the cases. So the only thing Congress can do without a constitutional amendment, and there's precedent for this, is set the number. So ironically, the one thing that even those on the left are leery of, and that is expanding the number of justices, that is something that is within the power of Congress to raise or lower the number of justices on the court. Other than that, when you're talking about enforceable ethics codes, you're exactly right. That's just Congress trying to stick its hands in another branch of government and take control. Term limits, not going to fly. I mean, justices could agree to abide by term limits. They could all say when they're nominated or confirmed, I agree to resign or take senior status after 15 years. But as far as an enforceable term limit that takes their vote away at 15 years, that would require a constitutional amendment as well, which is not going to happen. And Joe Biden and everyone touting this as news knows it's not going to happen.
Byron Henry, thanks for sharing your legal expertise on The James Show.
My pleasure.
All right, back to the phones after this, 800-288-9227. It's The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Welcome to The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. A Dallas cop posts online, wish the shooter had better aim. A lot of people are calling for his head. I understand. I wouldn't be upset if he got fired. I'm not sure if that's the best way to go about it. I am not comfortable turning into the cancel guy after we've griped about cancel culture for the last 10 or whatever years it is. But I'm really soft on this one. This isn't a black or white. This is a gray area for me. I can see the arguments on both sides. So let's see what you think. Lawrence in Grand Prairie, you're next up on WBAP. What do you think?
Hey, my brother, I think this. The cop knew better. I deal with the police. I'm a private security. licensed in the state of Texas. I'm from Flint, Michigan, where the bad water is, where that skank Obama came and said the water is safe to drink, where that crazy Joe Biden came and said, never again. The water still is poison in Flint. And I'm mad as hell because the Democratic Party has sold the rank and file blue-collar America out. And I'm going to tell you something. They're trying to make this a black and white issue. Let me tell you something, brother. Black America, white America, Latino America. We all on the same damn page. But if you listen to these talking heads, they would make you think that there's division among us. Let me tell you something, brother. Any person that works for a living is on the same page with other people that work for a living. It's the haves against the have-nots. I live a good life because I've worked 2 jobs the majority of my life. My daughter, educated. My son is over in the UAE, educated, in the uniform. Let me tell you something. If Biden was to win, if that skank Harris was to win, and I talk like this because this is the real world we talking about, and the real world we living in. There is no difference between black America and white America. But if you listen to the Democrats, they would make you think that the police are all against us. They would make you think the Republicans are all against us. I'm an independent Trump supporter, and I'm going to tell you for the record, black America is behind Donald Trump. It's just that the talking heads don't want the world to know that we support Donald Trump. Let me tell you, these black people on Sirius XM 126, they don't even want to talk to me because every time I talk on their stations, they get a ton of calls from black people supporting what I say. And I am 100% behind Donald Trump. I work for a living.
Well,
I'm
hang on.
still working, and I'm
Lawrence,
67 years old.
I appreciate your enthusiasm, but when you say black people are behind Donald Trump, they voted against him like 92% in the last election. Is he going to get more than 50% of the black vote at this time around? That seems like a stretch.
Let me put it to you real simple.
Yes, sir.
The black people who want something for nothing, who want to sit on their butt and get a handout, they are the ones who voting against Donald Trump. They're the ones who supporting the Democratic Party. But when you talk to the black people who work for a living, they are 100% behind Donald Trump. I'm going to tell you, I don't even deal with you. If you don't work, I don't even want to associate with you or talk to you. But if you're working for a living and you paying your taxes and you doing the right thing, we can sit down and converse and have a beer. But I'm going to tell you, black people right now, and I support, and I believe the last election was rigged. How you going to sit on your butt and drop a letter in the mail and cast your ballot? Really? Come on now. I ain't for that sit on your butt and stick the envelope in the mail because we don't know who it's coming from, where it's coming from. I believe the last election was rigged.
All right, now, Lawrence. That was great. I really appreciate the call. I have 28 other people on hold, and that dude's fired up, isn't he? More Lawrence, please. Can we get more Lawrence? Lawrence should be on TV when we get the coverage of the RNC tonight. Let's go to Bryce in Parker County. You're next up on WBAP. What do you think, sir?
Hey, James. As a man in public service, he swore to protect all lives, regardless of race, religion, or political view. And he has to remain apolitical in the public eye. Whatever he wants to do in his own time, I do agree that that's his business. But when he becomes public, it's betraying the trust of the public, and that's what he swore to.
Well, it has to. It can't be that cut and dry, because what if he said, "Hey, I support school choice"? Do you think he should be fired? That's clearly a political statement in the public eye. So it's not just as simple as you got to keep all politics out of the public eye. There's a little more nuance than that, Bryce.
That's fair. That's a good statement. But what I'll also say to your point about, and this is more about life and death. And I'll jump to the end. I was going to tell you, I'm all for turning the other cheek. As a Christian, I think that's what we're supposed to do and what we're called to do. But your actions can still have consequences. But the last point I'll make, and then I'll jump off because I know you got a lot on, and I don't know if anybody's made it yet, but the main issue that I have is when Donald Trump comes to Dallas and they put that guy on a special detail to protect the president, how can you trust that he's going to do his job?
Oh, you can't, because the only thing that makes sense in a statement like that is if this dude believes that he's literally Hitler or something close to Hitler. And so, hell no, he shouldn't be on any detail that's going to be protecting Trump. Yeah, the real problem, isn't that the guy has a political opinion that he's voicing publicly as a public servant. The problem is this dude has been convinced to think that Trump is Hitler, but go ahead and extrapolate that out. That means he thinks you're either an active Nazi or such an idiot dupe that you have fallen for the Nazis' propaganda. And yeah, that's the best argument against it. Neil in McKinney, you're next up on WBAP. What do you think?
All right. Appreciate you taking my call, and I'm glad a lot of time has passed for me to calm down. Otherwise, I would have talked a little bit like Lawrence. My position is this. He swore an oath, and like others have said, and I think he should be I listened to your lawyer, and he said, probably can't get fired, but I think he should be removed from service and put into some training, and there you can show grace by explaining to him that a comment like that is very powerful and really one you can't make. You say free speech, but you can't yell fire in a theater.
Yeah, well, also, like, where does this come from, Neil? Like, you have to be taught this. You're not born thinking this. So if this cop had parents that were sort of this casual anti-white racism that is sort of pervasive on the left, and then, he was getting a steady diet of it from his public school, and then if he did go to college, his college professors were parroting it. Everywhere he turns in music and movies and TV, he's getting the same message that, Flyover Country, Team Red, they're just a bunch of Hitlers and Nazis and racists and Klansmen and just god-awful people. And I think one of the bigger lessons, if you just not at an individual level, but look at this from a macro level, we've really got to stop this narrative. We've really trained people. People really believe that not necessarily you, Neil, but the guys listening to us too, that we're all evil and don't deserve the same protection as decent human beings do. We deserve the protection, the same treatment Nazis get. And I think that should be really not just disheartening, but something that needs to be attacked first. That's something that needs to be dealt with like immediately. 800-288-9227. It's the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Real quick, let's start with this call. Al in Garland, you're next up on the James Show on WBAP. What do you think, sir?
James, I can see where you are going with this.
Are you talking about the Dallas cop thing?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm a turn the other cheek guy.
Yes. However, don't you kind of have to treat him as if you would medical personnel? I mean, you can't have doctors showing any public bias toward patients. I mean, you just can't. And also, doesn't this also show that this officer has flawed judgment? Doesn't he know that him saying that publicly would impact his livelihood? He's not that bright. Is he that dumb? I mean, what if he rolls up to my house and I've got a Trump sign?
I do have an answer for it.
Yard.
I have an answer for that, because you're right. That's a huge problem. So there has got to be plenty of jobs, or at least a few jobs in the police department where you're not dealing with the public. You're not in a public face. Whoever has to change the oils on all the cop cars like once every 3,000 miles or whatever, or put gas in them or change the tires or file something away or be a janitor, go clean the toilets. Let's not fire him. Yeah, if you wanted to demote him and take him out of a non-public facing position, absolutely. That makes sense. I'm with you on that one.
Well, yeah, you could do that, but this guy deserves, he doesn't deserve to be in the police department. He just doesn't.
I feel you. I hear you. All right. Thank you very much, Alex. Hey, welcome to the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Welcome to the big show. We're still trying to figure out what happened on Saturday. We have some of the details, but we don't have the whole story. Still don't have a motive. Still don't have answers on so many of the what seems to be obvious security lapses. We're still seeing, you probably saw new footage yesterday that you hadn't seen in the days before. So while we're trying to figure all this out, there's other ancillary stories that are popping up. And one great example here is something that's happening probably in every major city right now in America. And someone's popped off. A teacher, a fireman in Dallas, it's a cop that popped off and said the same joke that you've seen a bunch of other thoughtless cretins put online. And they wish the shooter had better aim on Saturday. And so then the question comes up, well, should this guy keep his job? Should he be fired? Does that make you supporting a cancel culture? Does that make you the intolerant snowflake? Or is this just a guy who, look, if you think half of the country is Nazis, you probably shouldn't be running around chasing them with guns, right? But look, I understand that argument too. And I was saying, fine. He gets to keep his job. He just can't have a public-facing job. Maybe he's like a 9/11 dispatcher now, or maybe he mows the lawn or cleans the toilets or washes the cars, the police cars when they come back. I don't know. I don't know why I'm such a softy on this. I'm usually such a butthead. But really, I feel like this is a victimless crime. What he said was tasteless, not recommended. And you should probably have a memo saying, hey, other officers, don't say something this stupid online. But then again, this is sort of a teaching moment. This is a moment to show that you're not the Nazis they claim you are. If someone claims you're a Nazi and you're out there to oppress minorities and run all your political opponents underfoot, and then when you read it, what do? You run him out of town. You ruin his life. You take away his job. You can't support his family. You think that's going to make him like Team Red? You think that's going to be more open to the ideas that you would need to get into his head to change his voting patterns? I think this is a chance to win people over. I think this is a chance. I think that's the whole point of turn the other cheek, is now that any third party disinterested observers will know who the good guy is and who the bad guy is, because there will be one guy who wished death upon his political opponent, and the other side forgave him for it and gave him a second chance, although maybe with some modifications. Now, if you're just going to go ruin his life, how does the disinterested third party know which side's the good side? Now it just seems like we're in a polarized country and everyone's at each other's throats. I don't know. Am I being too soft? Because I think most of y'all disagree with me today, and that's okay. 800-288-9227. Let's try Rob in Princeton. You're on WBAP. What do you think?
Hey, James. I'm a retired police detective, right? And when we went to the academy, they told us not once, but probably 20 times, what you do on social media can get you fired because it's out for the public and you are representing the police department. It's not easy to become a police officer. You have to go through this vetting process that takes almost a year. Even harder to become a supervisor, which I think that's one thing that we're missing here. This guy was a sergeant. He's a supervisor. So if he's on scene and there's an incident and they have to decide whether they're going to kick in your front door or take you to jail, and the officers are undecided, the supervisor has to make that call. He has illustrated wholeheartedly, maybe he was intoxicated when he did it, I don't know, but he's already proven that he has poor judgment. And I think when you're a police officer, you should be held to a higher standard. Just like you as a radio host, the FCC gives you guidelines. If you step out of those, you're terminated. And I don't want the guy fired. I agree with you, he shouldn't be fired because it's not easy to make that job become a reality for you. And a lot of guys dream about doing that their whole life. But there should be and absolutely should be discipline, whether it's a demotion from sergeant back to patrol.
You're right.
But I think there should be some type of accountability. Otherwise, we're telling everybody else it's okay. And I think that's a problem. And I think any other cop who's in good standing with their agency would probably back me up on this.
Well, how does it feel to be the first guy to agree with me today? Thank you very much. Somebody's on my team. At least Rob in Princeton is. And he actually has expertise in the field. Thank you very much. Let's try Steve in Dallas. You're next up on WBAP. What do you think should happen to this guy?
Yeah, I kind of somewhat agree with what the last caller just said, but, you say tolerance. We've been tolerant as a conservative party. We've been tolerant. We keep getting walked on. People keep taking advantage of it. There's nothing happening. The biggest thing, there needs to be some type of consequences. As far as his judgment as a police officer, if you're one-sided like that, I don't think the public will ever trust you again. But the biggest thing is there's consequences. There's no consequences for people just getting on there and saying whatever, and it doesn't matter who it hurts or anything else. It's not a physically hurting thing, but how would you feel if it was your family that somebody took a shot at and you got somebody mouthing off like that?
Terrible.
It's not right.
Yeah,
it's not right. You shouldn't say it. With that, there should be consequences for it. Demote him. He shouldn't be a police officer, in my opinion. In that, there are other city jobs though that you could demote him to or move him to, where he's, as you said, not in public limelight.
What if we made him only go to blue areas? Because one of the legit concerns, and something I'm partial to, is the idea if he goes on a call and there's like a Trump flag or even an American flag out front, do you trust this guy to have even judgment in that scenario? Absolutely not. So let's make him go to only Team Blue neighborhoods. Here, you can go to South Oak Cliff or the hyper blue parts of Pleasant Grove, and if anything will change his mind politically speaking is making him just waller in Team Blue his entire life and have him deal with those folks. That I've met many cops who have changed their political persuasion from having to deal with the bad side of every community for a couple of decades. That makes people conservative and pro law enforcement and rule of law and Team Red more than a lot of other avenues. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I spent 15 years as a firefighter and paramedic, and we all bleed red. It doesn't matter your affiliate, and if you send them to one area or another, that's still division. It's not unity.
Well, look, you like Democrats there. Why don't you go deal with those Democrats? How you like them Democrats? Chris and Sherman, you're next up on WBAP. What do you think?
Most of the good comments, I think, have already been spoken, but there's another component here. First off, I think not only should he be terminated, but he should be made an example of, because if you remove the context of the president nearly being assassinated and go with purely what this guy put out on social media, it's a threat against a former president. And if it was looked at strictly from that perspective via Secret Service, he'd be investigated. And it would be a serious investigation.
I don't think that counts as a threat. It's not an actionable threat. It's not like he's ever within eyesight of the cop or could pull the trigger himself. It's like he's cheering on a threat. He was speaking nicely of a threat, but that doesn't make it a threat himself. And that's an important distinction, because you can actively stop someone if they're threatening you. I can punch you in the face or shoot you with my own gun if you're making an actionable threat. So I don't think that matches here.
So if you add in the reality that he's a law enforcement officer, then that changes the landscape in my view. The other piece of the puzzle is that this guy, if I remember reading correctly, he's like a senior representative for a group of Latino law enforcement officers, which paints a negative picture of an entire group as well.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you highlighted that.
An example of,
because I am noticing finally, you and I have been hoping for it to happen for a long time, but some people are starting to catch on that, hey, if there's a women's group out there that's political, there's basically a 100% chance it's going to be lefty, unless it's like in their name, like the Republican Women of Collin County or something. For all these Latino groups, whether it's the Black Caucus in the Congress, they have the Congressional Black Caucus, happens to be Democrats. All these little things where they specify your identity group. If it's an LGBT group, you can almost guarantee they're going to be Democrat leaning. If it's a women's group, Democrat leaning. If it's a people of color group, Democrat leaning. People are starting to catch on to that no, you don't really care about these people. You only care about this political party and exploiting the suffering of these people for your political ends. And people are waking up to that, and it's glorious. Thank you for your call, Chris and Sherman. 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227 if you want to jump in and be part of the show. This is The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Welcome back to The Big Show. Well, we're dealing with the issue here in Dallas that I bet they're dealing with this in a lot of cities right now. Some cop put online, he wished the shooter had better aim. And a lot of people are calling for his head. Should he be fired? What do you think? I very rarely get accused of being a softie, but I think this is one of the few times it may apply. I don't think he should be fired. I don't think it was that bad. I think the realization isn't that, well, this guy's totally unfit for his job. The realization is this is the natural result of the American public being told Trump is Hitler for the last however many years now, 9 years. Of course people think like that. And of course cops think like that. That's all they've been told. And if they've never been outside of the bubble, there's a ton of people who the only thing they know about Team Red or what it's like to live in red state America is what they see on TV, what they see in their movies, hear in their music, watch on their TV shows, hear from their politicians, their favorite actors, their college professors. They don't know. Don't take this personal. They don't know you. And I love having this conversation with my Team Blue friends. Just real quick, I'm going to get to the calls here. But I had a producer at a previous show at a previous station that I worked at, happens to be a woman of color. And when I mentioned going to this bluegrass festival that was out in the middle of nowhere, she's like, oh, I don't think I'd be safe out there. And I told her, well, you're safer there than you are in your neighborhood. And she said, wait a minute. Okay, maybe. And look, I didn't convert her. I didn't change her mind, but I planted a seed in her head where she actually has to think about it. Wait, I'm told my entire life that these people are dangerous. It's dangerous if I drive out an hour in any direction in the country and I'm surrounded by white Republicans. I mean, I might see a Confederate flag or something crazy like that. But At some point, they'll rationalize in their head when they turn on the news and they see people who look like her. They're getting shot by the droves in blue areas, in blue jurisdictions, in Democrat voting neighborhoods. But out in red state America, you're right. There may be something to what that old Parker said. And so that's where this softness comes from. I'm about converting people. I'm about proving them wrong. I'm not about getting into this never-ending political correctness slap fight. 800-288-9225. Oh, by the way, 9227. Tell me I'm wrong. People tell me I'm wrong all the time. Just ask my wife. Chris in Bowie, you're on the James Show on WBAP. What do you think?
I think I agree with you, but I disagree with you. I got a couple reasons why.
Okay.
This guy is a 12-year veteran of the force, if I learned right, or if I heard right. He's not a college kid. He's not a mind of mush to be swayed by all the different opinions floating around and his teachers and professors. He's a grown adult man. He's in charge of a big group of Latino officers. I disagree with you there on the whole, where his opinion comes from. I agree with you on the whole, I think it would be better. My grandmother used to say all the time, you catch more flies with honey than you do with salt. So I do agree with you on the whole, well, you're fired. Well, now then he just sits back and says, oh, those damn Republicans.
Yeah, in fact, he's more sure in his position. I told you they were out to get me.
Right. But at the same time that I agree with you on that point, I also disagree with you on the point that it's not cancel culture to be responsible for your actions. If you came out and said, you're running a Latino group, you're fired, that's cancel culture to me. And I'm from the sticks, man, Bowie, Texas, little town out in the middle of nowhere. We're a predominantly white town. I live in that world, and I don't see the cancel because we just don't have it. But I do have consequences for what I do. My kids have consequences for what they do. At my job, I drive a truck for a living. If I don't haul things to the right places, I don't see that as being a cancel culture issue by having to face the reality of what you've done. So I don't know where I stand.
I know. There was still some gray area after all of that, yeah, but I'm having the same hard time expressing exactly where I nail my position on this because I'm trying to figure it out too. I can squeeze in one more, right? Thank you, Garrett. Jeff in Mineral Wells, you're on WBAP. What do you think?
Yes, sir. I spent 20 years as a civil servant in Fort Worth, and I never once asked anybody their party affiliation when I was called to serve. I think this, at the end of the day, is much ado about nothing. I agree with your stance that he should not be terminated. That said, there's a standard of conduct for people who serve within police and fire departments for municipalities, and you just allow the internal SOPs to handle, his punishment, if you will, for that internally. But I find it appalling that it becomes a cancel culture component here. But I certainly understand with the heightened anger and visceral that's going on why people jump to such conclusions. But that's my humble opinion.
Thank you very much, Jeff. And if you want to go the other direction, like in the Bible when they talk about if a guy wants to take your shirt, give him your cloak as well. Like maybe not only should we not be canceling this guy and trying to get him fired, maybe like the Dallas County Republican Party or the Dallas Jewish Conservatives or some of these other politically active groups should send him some flowers, maybe an apple pie, maybe tickets to a show. Like we should really put on the charm offensive. Oh, really? You think we're evil? Would Hitler give you a homemade apple pie? Or I like sending people stuffed peppers where you take the jalapeno pepper and you put the cream cheese in it and wrap it in bacon. Bake them like 40 of those, drop them off at his house. Hey, this is from the people who definitely are not Nazis. Just a thought. And I'm going to tie this into, we'll continue with this storyline. By the way, can I get some female callers? Oh, look, there's one. More female callers, please. I think I've taken like 12 calls and it's all dudes. Which, guys, you're fine. I've just had enough of you. And I'm going to tie this into what's going on with another congressional representative here in Dallas, too. This whole cancel culture talk continues on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Welcome to the big show. Now we have this Dallas cop who's under fire for saying wish the guy had better aim on Saturday. A lot of people are calling for him to be canceled, to be fired, never to work in law enforcement again. I'm in a gray area myself. I can understand why you would fire him, but wouldn't it be better if he kept his job and we just had a chat with him and explained to him, that's not really Hitler up there. These people are wrong about your neighbors. These people are wrong about Team Red. They're not really Nazis. Just like your mask didn't really work and your vaccine didn't really work, these people are not Nazis. Just like the Nord Stream pipeline didn't blow itself up and we did it. Those people are not Nazis. Your neighbors are not Nazis. Just like repealing net neutrality didn't grind the internet to a halt. Didn't send the prices skyrocketing and the speeds plummeting. They're wrong about this too. Just like they lied. They were wrong about inflation being transitory. They're wrong about Team Red being Nazis. And then there's another story that's happening parallel to this here in Dallas. We have one of our congressional representatives, Jasmine Crockett. You know her from the great soundbite, bleach blonde, bad built butch body. That lady. She's a congressional representative, and her district is here in Dallas. And these are our neighbors. Well, she put up a bill after Trump got his 34 felony conviction saying Secret Service should not be provided at taxpayer expense to anyone who's been convicted of a felony. Now, I think she's wrong, and clearly she's exploiting the political persecution of her opponents to try and take some protections away from them. Sure. And look, while I disagree with the bill, I don't like what the rest of the Texas congressional delegation did. A bunch of them got together and made a letter. A bunch of the Republican ones did, and they all signed it saying she should resign. Dude, just because she comes up with a stupid bill, a bad bill, I don't want to say it's dumb, but it's pretty dumb. It's just, you could just debate the bill. You could just win the argument based on the merits of your position. It's pretty easy to slap that one down. I understand what she's saying, too. It's not a completely mean-spirited bill. What if someone goes to prison? Are we going to have a Secret Service people live in the cells around him to make sure he's safe? Are they're going to have to be his bunkmates or something? How would that work? It's a bad bill, but it's a legit conversation to have. And it's pretty easy to win. So why would you just run them out of the room instead of having a chat with them, being like, listen, Jasmine, you're wrong on this one. And let me tell you why. It's not because I hate you. It's not because you're female. It's not because you're black. It's not because you're Team Blue. But no, it's the same thing. Stop. They do it to you, and it's wrong. It doesn't become right when you do it to them, I think is the case I'm trying to make. I'm so bad at this for this being my job. Donna in Dallas, you're next up on WBAP. What do you think should happen to the cop?
Well, I am personally acquainted with a Dallas police officer. And I think...
Wait, you know this guy?
No, I don't know that guy.
Oh.
I am personally acquainted with a Dallas police officer.
With a Dallas police officer. Okay,
Yes.
Sorry.
And we're not talking cancel culture. You are comparing apples to oranges. And the reason I feel that way is because this is, as we've said, someone who is sworn to serve and protect. And he carries a badge and a gun. And he has made a public statement that it is his opinion that someone he does not like and does not agree with deserves to be dead. Now, he is roaming around our streets of Dallas.
Okay, but Donna, hang on. I'm sorry to interrupt you here, but listen, if it was literally Hitler, I know it's not Hitler, I know Trump's not Hitler, but if there really was a Hitler and you really have been sworn to protect the general public or whatever, killing Hitler's not a bad thing. The problem isn't that he's violating his oath to do what's best for the public. The problem is he thinks that Trump's Hitler. He's been convinced that Trump is Hitler.
So you're saying he's been brainwashed?
Kinda, yeah.
No, because he has access to the same stories, the same media. He can research it himself if he cares to. He has chosen to take a dark side. And this is a man who has the actual ability to make people he does not like dead. Do you want him roaming around your streets? We have enough cops like that.
Okay, Donna, what if maybe you missed about 4 segments ago, the idea was thrown up that he keeps his job, he just can't be public facing. So he can work in
do that.
What if he works in the garage and he just changes the tires on cop cars?
I'm telling you, you can't do that because that's a civil service job. That's not a law enforcement job, and the unions are not going to allow that. That's not even legal. You can't do that.
Well, now we have a union problem. He can't clean the toilets or something? There's not any job in the police force that's not public facing? He can't be like a dispatch or something?
That's an entirely different job. You can't do that.
All right, well, Donna, you've done better job than anyone else stumping me on this one. I appreciate your call. See, this is what...
Do you want that guy roaming around your street deciding who should live and die?
No, I don't. You're right.
No, you don't.
All right. Donna gets 8 points for caller for that good call. All right, 800-288-WBAP, 800-288-9227. Coming up next, we're going to turn our focus back to the Republican National Convention. I've got some highlights. We're going to talk to Raven Harrison, and I'll get you all caught up on that on politics next on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.